Tasha Cole learned early that invisibility was a survival skill. She moved through the court like a shadow, head down, hands busy, voice absent. While the betas gathered in the sunlit corridors to gossip and flirt, she scrubbed the floors they walked on. While the omegas with wolves preened and paraded for visiting alphas, she carried their discarded gowns to the laundry wing. No one looked at her, and that was exactly how she stayed alive. The Sandoval court was a place of beauty and brutality. Marble columns stretched toward vaulted ceilings painted with the history of the pack. Alphas conquering, omegas submitting, bloodlines honored. Every inch of it was designed to remind you where you stood in the hierarchy. And Tasha stood at the very bottom. Move, mutt. Brenda Wood's voice was sharp and cold, the kind of tone that came naturally to betas who enjoyed their rank just enough to weaponize it. She didn't wait for Tasha to step aside. She shoved past, her elbow slamming into Tasha's shoulder hard enough to send the bucket of soapy water sloshing onto the stone floor. Tasha said nothing. She knelt, wrung out the rag, and started again. Brenda laughed, a short, cruel sound that echoed down the hall. Pathetic. 19 years old and still wolfless. What's even the point of you? Tasha kept scrubbing. She'd heard worse. From Brenda. From Marilyn Royster, the Omega who acted like a queen because her wolf was strong and her family was old. From the guards who stepped over her like furniture. From the court physician who'd examined her twice and declared her deficient. Wolfless. Broken. Useless. They'd been calling her that since she was 8 years old, the age when most wolves awakened. Hers never came. No shift. No surge of power. No connection to the primal force that made someone whole in the eyes of the pack. So she became invisible. It was safer that way. The main courtyard buzzed with energy as the evening ceremony drew near. Tasha worked in the outer hall, polishing silver trays that would carry wine and delicacies to the high table. She could hear the laughter, the music beginning to swell, the low hum of conversation as nobles arrived in silk and fur. Tonight was important. The alpha son, Jeffrey Sandoval, was expected to announce his chosen mate. Rumor had it he'd already made his decision weeks ago, but tradition demanded the public declaration. The entire court would bear witness. Tasha had no reason to attend. She was staff. Furniture. A tool. But Marilyn Royster had other ideas. You. Tasha looked up to find Marilyn standing in the doorway, draped in emerald green, her auburn hair pinned with gold. She looked like everything Tasha wasn't: graceful, powerful, desired. Lady Royster, Tasha said quietly, lowering her eyes. Marilyn's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You'll attend tonight. Tasha blinked. It's not a request. Marilyn stepped closer, her heels clicking against the stone. The ceremony requires a full count of omegas, even the broken ones. The words landed like a slap, but Tasha kept her expression neutral. There's a dress in the servant quarters, Marilyn continued. Wear it. Be in the hall by sundown. And try not to embarrass us more than you already do by existing. She left without waiting for a response. Tasha stood alone in the corridor, the silver tray still in her hands, her reflection distorted in its polished surface. She didn't want to go. But she'd learned long ago that wanting didn't matter. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, Tasha stood at the back of the great hall in a plain gray dress that hung too loose on her frame. The room blazed with candlelight and grandeur. Alphas stood tall and proud. Omegas glowed with beauty and confidence. Betas moved between them like threads weaving a tapestry. And Tasha? She was a shadow. Until the moment Jeffrey Sandoval's eyes found hers across the hall. Chapter 2. The Night of Rejection. The ceremony began with music. Soft strings filled the hall, weaving through the murmur of conversation and the clink of crystal glasses. Alphas stood in clusters near the dais, their presence commanding even in stillness. Omegas drifted like silk between them, radiant and aware of every eye that followed their movements. Tasha remained at the back, pressed against the cold stone wall. She didn't belong here. Everyone knew it. She could feel their glances, quick, dismissive, sometimes laced with pity or contempt. Brenda would whispered something to a beta beside her, and both of them laughed while looking in Tasha's direction. Tasha kept her eyes down. Just survive the night. That was all she had to do. Then the music stopped. The hall fell silent as Alpha Dominic Sandoval stepped onto the dais, his presence alone enough to command submission. He was broad-shouldered and silver-haired, his wolf's dominance so potent it radiated through the room like heat. Beside him stood his son, Jeffrey Sandoval, tall, sharp-featured, with dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. He was everything an alpha was supposed to be, strong, confident, destined to lead. Every Omega in the court had dreamed of being chosen by him at some point. Tasha had never allowed herself that luxury. Tonight, Alpha Dominic began, his voice rolling through the hall like thunder. We honor tradition. My son will declare his chosen mate before this court, and the bond will be witnessed by all. A ripple of excitement moved through the crowd. Jeffrey stepped forward, his gaze sweeping across the room, and then, impossibly, his eyes locked onto Tasha. Her breath caught.
No.
He wouldn't. He couldn't, but he was walking toward her. The crowd parted, confusion flickering across noble faces as Jeffrey crossed the hall with deliberate steps. Tasha's heart slammed against her ribs. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the stone, to wake up from whatever nightmare this was. Jeffrey stopped in front of her. Up close, his expression was unreadable, cold, measured, devoid of warmth. Tasha Cole, he said, his voice loud enough for the entire hall to hear. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. He reached out, and for one terrible, confusing moment, she thought he was going to take her hand. Instead, he gripped her wrist and pulled her forward into the center of the hall. The room erupted in whispers. Tasha stumbled, her pulse roaring in her ears as every eye in the court turned toward her. She could feel their shock, their disgust, their disbelief. Why was he doing this? Jeffrey released her wrist and stepped back, his expression hardening. This, he said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade, is what weakness looks like. The hall went silent. Tasha's stomach dropped. For 19 years, Jeffrey continued, his tone sharp and deliberate, this Omega has existed in this court without a wolf, without strength, without purpose. He turned to face the crowd, his back to her now. And some of you, out of misplaced pity, have allowed her to remain. Tasha's hands trembled. But I will not. He turned back to her, and the look in his eyes was pure contempt. I, Jeffrey Sandoval, son of Alpha Dominic, reject you, Tasha Cole, as unworthy of this court, unworthy of protection, and unworthy of the bond you were never strong enough to claim. The words hit her like physical blows. The hall erupted, gasps, murmurs, a few cruel laughs. Tasha stood frozen, her vision blurring at the edges. Rejected.
Publicly. Brutally.
Marilyn Royster stood near the dais, her smile barely concealed. Brenda Wood looked triumphant. Even the guards watched with indifference, as if this were nothing more than entertainment. Tasha's chest tightened. Her breathing came shallow and fast. And then something inside her cracked. Not her heart. Something deeper. A pressure that had been building for 19 years, buried so deep she hadn't known it was there. It surged. The air around her seemed to shift, growing heavy and electric. Jeffrey frowned, taking a step back. The candles flickered. Tasha's hands clenched into fists, her nails biting into her palms as heat, searing, impossible heat, flooded her veins. The whisper stopped, because everyone in that hall felt it. The shift in the air, the change in her scent, the awakening of something that should never have existed in someone like her. Tasha's eyes lifted, and for the first time in her life, she didn't look down. She looked straight at Jeffrey Sandoval. And deep inside her chest, a silver wolf opened its eyes. Chapter 3. The Silver Wolf Stirs. The hall didn't erupt into chaos. It froze. Every alpha, every beta, every omega stood perfectly still, their instincts screaming at them that something had fundamentally shifted in the room. The air pressed down like a weight, thick and charged, as if the atmosphere itself had become aware. Tasha's heartbeat thundered in her ears. Her skin burned. Her vision sharpened, the candlelight suddenly too bright, every sound too loud. She could hear breathing, dozens of people holding their breath. She could smell fear beneath the perfume and wine. And she could feel it. The wolf. Not emerging. Not yet. But awake. Jeffrey took another step back, his confident mask cracking for the first time. His eyes widened, his nostrils flaring as her scent hit him. No longer the flat, forgettable trace of a wolfless omega. This was something else entirely. What? He started, but his voice faltered. Because Tasha was looking at him. Really looking at him. And the girl who had scrubbed floors and kept her head down her entire life was gone. You rejected me, she said quietly. Her voice didn't waver. It didn't need to. The silver wolf inside her growled, and the sound reverberated through her chest like distant thunder. Alpha Dominic stepped forward on the dais, his expression sharp and calculating. What is this? Tasha didn't answer him. She didn't owe him anything. The heat in her veins intensified, spreading through her limbs, her fingers, her spine. She could feel the wolf pushing against the edges of her consciousness, not violently, but with absolute certainty. It had been sleeping, sealed, buried beneath years of neglect and humiliation. And now it was awake. Marilyn Royster's voice cut through the silence, high and panicked. She's shifting. How is she shifting? She doesn't have a wolf, Brenda hissed from somewhere in the crowd. But they could all feel it now. The dominance rolling off Tasha in waves. It wasn't the raw, brutal force of an alpha. It was something quieter, sharper, ancient. A wolf that didn't need to roar to make you submit. Tasha's hands trembled. Not from fear, but from restraint. The wolf wanted out. It wanted to show them exactly what they'd been mocking for 19 years. But Tasha held it back. Not yet. Not here, Tasha. Jeffrey's voice was harder now, trying to regain control. Stand down.
She almost laughed.
Stand down. As if she were soldier. As if she were still beneath him. You humiliated me, Tasha said, her voice steady and cold. In front of everyone. You called me weak. Jeffrey's jaw tightened. You were... I was surviving, she interrupted, and the room went silent again. While you played alpha. While you preened and postured and pretended you were untouchable. The wolf inside her snarled, and the chandeliers above flickered. Several omegas gasped. Alpha Dominic's eyes narrowed. Enough. His command rolled through the hall, heavy with dominance, the kind of order that made lesser wolves drop to their knees. Tasha didn't move. The silver wolf rose inside her chest, meeting his dominance with something older, something that didn't bend. Dominic's expression shifted, just for a moment, into something that looked like shock. He felt it. They all did. She's not submitting, someone whispered. How is she not submitting? Tasha's breathing evened out. The heat began to settle, sinking deeper into her bones, her blood, her soul. The wolf wasn't disappearing.
It was integrating.
Becoming part of her. She looked at Jeffrey one last time. You wanted to reject me because I was weak, she said quietly. So let me make this clear. She stepped forward. He stepped back. I don't need your bond. I don't need your protection. And I sure as hell don't need your permission to exist. The hall was silent. Tasha turned and walked toward the doors, her head high, her step steady. No one stopped her. No one dared. Because they could all feel it now, the silver wolf walking beside her, unseen but undeniable. And as the great doors closed behind her, the court remained frozen in place. Because for the first time in the history of the Sandoval court, a wolfless omega had made an alpha back down. And deep in the shadows of the hall, a figure watched her leave. And smiled. Chapter 4. The Court Divides. Tasha didn't sleep that night. She sat in the small servants' quarters she'd occupied for years, her back against the cold stone wall, listening to the silence. The silver wolf inside her was still there, awake, alert, waiting. It didn't speak in words. It didn't need to. She could feel its presence like a second heartbeat, steady and certain, filling the hollow spaces inside her that had always felt empty. For the first time in her life, Tasha wasn't alone. But she also wasn't safe. By dawn, the entire court knew what had happened. Whispers spread through the halls like wildfire, impossible, dangerous, thrilling whispers. The wolfless Omega had awakened. She'd stood against an alpha and didn't submit. She'd walked out of the ceremony as if she had every right to. Some called it a miracle. Others called it a threat. Tasha kept to the shadows, moving through the corridors with the same practiced invisibility she'd always used. But now people noticed her. Their eyes followed her. Their conversations stopped when she passed. She wasn't invisible anymore. And that made her a target. Tasha Cole. The voice was smooth, cultured, and unfamiliar. Tasha turned to find a man standing in the archway, tall, dark-haired, with a kind of sharp, calculating eyes that missed nothing. He wore the deep blue of the Northern Territories, his wolf's presence controlled but unmistakable. An alpha. "I don't believe we've met," he said, stepping closer. "Andrew Smith. I represent the Crescent Ridge Pack." Tasha said nothing. Andrew smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You've caused quite a stir. The court hasn't stopped talking about you." "I didn't ask for their attention," Tasha said quietly. "No," Andrew agreed, studying her with unsettling intensity. "But you have it now, and that makes you valuable." Tasha's wolf stirred, a low warning rumbling through her chest. Andrew noticed. His smile widened. "Interesting. Your wolf is protective. Dominant even." He tilted his head. "Tell me, Tasha, do you know what you are?" "I'm an Omega." "Are you?" The question hung in the air between them. Before Tasha could respond, another voice cut through the corridor. "She's not interested, Smith." Edward Martin stepped out of the shadows, his presence filling the space with quiet authority. He was older than Andrew, silver streaking his dark hair, his wolf's dominance ancient and unyielding. He wore the crimson of the Eastern Packs. Another alpha. Andrew's expression didn't change, but his tone sharpened. "I wasn't aware you had a claim on her, Martin." "I don't," Edward said evenly. "But neither do you." The air between them crackled with tension. Tasha took a step back, her pulse quickening. She could feel their wolves, both powerful, both assessing, both seeing her as something to be controlled or claimed. "Gentlemen." All three of them turned. Alpha Dominic Sandoval stood at the far end of the corridor, flanked by two guards. His expression was carved from stone, his wolf's dominance radiating outward like a physical force. "This Omega," Dominic said, his voice cold and measured, "is under the protection of this court. Any claims made upon her will go through me." Andrew inclined his head, his smile never faltering. "Of course, Alpha Dominic. I meant no disrespect." Edward said nothing, but his eyes remained on Tasha. Dominic gestured sharply. "Leave us." Both alphas hesitated, just for a moment before turning and walking away. Tasha stood alone with Dominic and his guards. The alpha stepped closer, his gaze piercing. "You've become a problem, Tasha Cole." "I didn't ask to be," she said quietly. "No," Dominic agreed. "But you are. Your awakening has drawn attention from rival packs. They see you as an opportunity, a weapon, a prize." Tasha's hands clenched into fists. "I'm not any of those things. That doesn't matter." Dominic's tone was sharp. "What matters is what they believe. And right now, they believe you're worth fighting over." Tasha met his gaze, the silver wolf inside her rising to meet his dominance, without flinching. Dominic's eyes narrowed. "You will not leave this court without my permission. You will not speak to rival alphas without supervision. And you will submit to the laws that govern this pack." "Or what?" Tasha asked quietly. Dominic's expression darkened. "Or I will make you." Chapter 5. Laws meant to break her. The council chamber was built for intimidation. High ceilings. Dark wood. Rows of seats arranged in a half-circle around a single chair in the center, the seat of judgment. Tasha had never been inside this room before. Servants didn't need to know where decisions were made. Now she sat in that chair, surrounded by the most powerful wolves in the territory. And every single one of them wanted to control her. Alpha Dominic presided from the head of the council, his expression unreadable. To his right sat Elder Marcus Green, a gray-haired wolf whose age hadn't diminished his dominance. To his left, Elder Vivian Cross, sharp-eyed and calculating, her wolf's presence coiled like a snake. Jeffrey stood near the back wall, his arms crossed, his jaw tight. He hadn't spoken to her since the ceremony. Tasha kept her hands folded in her lap, her breathing steady. The silver wolf inside her was calm, watchful, but not anxious. It knew what this was. A trap. Elder Marcus cleared his throat, the sound echoing through the chamber. Tasha Cole, you stand before this council because your recent awakening has raised concerns regarding pack law and Omega protocol. Tasha said nothing. Vivian leaned forward, her voice smooth and cold. An Omega without a registered wolf is considered unprotected under territorial law. But an Omega with an awakened wolf, particularly one of unknown origin, must be claimed, bonded, or assigned to a pack protector within 30 days. Tasha's pulse quickened. Failure to comply, Vivian continued, results in exile or forfeiture of autonomy to the ruling Alpha. There it was, the cage they'd built just for her. This law, Marcus added, exists to protect Omegas from rival packs, from rogue wolves, and from their own inability to defend themselves. Tasha's wolf growled softly, and she felt the air around her shift. Marcus noticed. His eyes narrowed. You disagree? He asked. Tasha met his gaze. I can defend myself. Can you? Vivian's smile was razor thin. You've had your wolf for less than 48 hours. You've never trained, never fought, never shifted fully. That doesn't mean I'm helpless. It means you're untested, Dominic said, his voice cutting through the exchange like a blade. And untested Omegas are liabilities. Tasha's hands tightened in her lap. So, you'll force me to bond with someone, or exile me, or take away my freedom entirely. We will protect the integrity of this pack, Dominic said evenly. Even if that means protecting you from yourself. Jeffrey finally spoke, his voice low and tight. She could be assigned a protector. Someone neutral. Someone who isn't trying to claim her. Vivian scoffed. And who would that be? You? Jeffrey's jaw clenched. You rejected her publicly, Vivian continued, her tone dripping with disdain. You humiliated her in front of the entire court. And now you want to play hero? I want to keep her safe, Jeffrey snapped. No, Tasha said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. No, she repeated, her voice stronger now. I don't want your protection, Jeffrey. I don't want anyone's protection. You don't have a choice, Marcus said flatly. Yes, I do. The room went silent. Tasha stood, and the silver wolf rose with her, its presence filling the chamber like smoke. You're using old laws to trap me, she said, her voice steady and clear. Laws written when Omegas were considered property. When we were supposed to be weak and submissive and grateful for scraps of dignity. Vivian's expression darkened. Sit down, girl. Tasha didn't move. I'm not asking for your permission, she continued. I'm telling you, I won't be claimed. I won't be bonded. I won't be assigned to anyone. Dominic rose from his seat, his dominance crashing down like a tidal wave. You will obey pack law. Tasha met his dominance with the silver wolf's quiet, unyielding power. And once again, she didn't submit. The council members shifted uneasily. Dominic's eyes narrowed. If you refuse to comply, you will be exiled. You will have no pack, no protection, no territory. Then exile me, Tasha said softly. The words hung in the air. Dominic stared at her, his expression unreadable. And for the first time, Tasha saw something flicker behind his eyes. Not anger, uncertainty. Because she wasn't supposed to stand. She was supposed to break. But the silver wolf inside her had been broken once. And it would never break again. Chapter 6. The choice to stand alone. They didn't exile her. Not yet. Instead, they gave her 3 days. 3 days to reconsider. 3 days to come to her senses. 3 days to choose a protector, accept a bond, or submit to the council's authority. Tasha spent those 3 days preparing to leave. She had nothing to pack. No belongings worth keeping. No ties to sever. For 19 years, she'd lived in the Sandoval court like a ghost, and ghosts didn't leave footprints. But the silver wolf inside her was restless. It didn't want to run. It wanted to fight. On the second night, someone knocked on her door. Tasha opened it to find Jeffrey standing in the dim corridor, his expression tight and conflicted. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. "To talk." "We have nothing to talk about." Jeffrey's jaw clenched. "Tasha, please. Just let me in." She should have closed the door. She didn't. Jeffrey stepped inside, and the small room felt even smaller with his presence filling it. He looked around, at the bare walls, the narrow cot, the single window overlooking the servants' courtyard. "You lived here," he said, his voice hollow. "All this time. You lived here." "Where did you think I lived?" Tasha asked. "In the guest wing?" Jeffrey flinched. Tasha crossed her arms. "Say what you came to say." He turned to face her, and for the first time since the ceremony, she saw something other than arrogance in his eyes. Regret. "I was wrong," Jeffrey said quietly. "What I did at the ceremony, it was cruel. Unnecessary. And he stopped, searching for words. "I didn't know. About your wolf. About what you were." "You didn't care," Tasha corrected. "There's a difference." Jeffrey winced. "You're right. I didn't care. You were invisible to me. And when my father pressured me to make a statement, to prove I wouldn't be weak he stopped himself." "Like what?" Tasha asked coldly. Jeffrey looked away. "My father wanted me to reject someone publicly. Do you understand what you've done? By refusing protection, you've opened yourself to challenge. Any alpha in this hall can step forward and fight for the right to bond with you." Tasha's breathing steadied. The wolf inside her grew calm.
"Certain."
She looked at Marcus, then at Dominic, then at the crowd of alphas watching her like prey. And she smiled. "Good," Tasha said quietly. "Let them come." The hall went silent, because they realized, too late, that she wasn't afraid. She was ready. Chapter 8. Make them submit. Andrew Smith stepped forward first. He moved with the confidence of a wolf who had never lost a challenge, his dominance rolling through the hall like thunder. The crowd parted for him, murmurs rippling in his wake. "I invoke the law of challenge," Andrew said, his voice clear and formal. "I claim the right to bond with Tasha Cole, Omega of the Silver Wolf." The hall buzzed with anticipation. Tasha stood perfectly still, her wolf rising inside her like smoke. Dominic's expression was carved from granite. "The challenge is witnessed. Tasha Cole, do you accept or yield?"
Tasha met Andrew's gaze.
"I accept." Andrew's smile widened. "Smart choice. This will be quick." He shifted. The transformation was instant, fur rippling across his skin, bones reshaping, power flooding the air as his wolf emerged. He was massive, dark-furred and dominant, his eyes gleaming with predatory focus. The crowd stepped back, giving them space. Tasha didn't move. Andrew circled her slowly, his wolf's presence pressing down on her like a weight, testing her resolve, waiting for her to submit. She didn't. The silver wolf inside her was perfectly calm, waiting. Andrew lunged. He moved fast, faster than most wolves could track, his jaws aimed for her throat in a show of dominance meant to force her down, to make her yield. But Tasha shifted, and the world stopped. Her transformation was nothing like Andrew's. It was silent, seamless. One moment she stood as a woman. The next, a silver wolf stood in her place, sleek and powerful, her fur gleaming like moonlight, her eyes blazing with ancient authority. The hall went silent.
Because they could feel it now.
Not dominance. Not force. Something older. Andrew hesitated, his wolf's instinct screaming at him that something was wrong. Tasha moved. She didn't attack, she didn't need to. She simply walked toward him, her steps measured and deliberate, and her presence alone made him take a step back. Then another. His wolf's ears flattened, his body lowered, and before he could stop himself, before his pride could override his instincts, Andrew Smith submitted. He dropped to the ground, his head bowed, his wolf whining softly in surrender. The crowd erupted in chaos. Tasha shifted back, standing over him in human form, her breathing steady, her expression calm. "Get up," she said quietly. Andrew shifted back, his face flushed with humiliation and shock. He scrambled to his feet and backed away, his eyes wide. He'd lost. Without a single blow. Edward Martin stepped forward before the crowd could settle. "I invoke the law of challenge," he said, his voice hard and unyielding. Tasha turned to face him. "Then come." Edward didn't hesitate. He shifted immediately, his wolf larger than Andrew's, older and more experienced. His dominance was ancient, his power honed over decades of rule. He didn't circle. He attacked. Edward's wolf slammed into her with the force of a battering ram, jaws snapping, claws raking, trying to overwhelm her with sheer strength and speed. But the silver wolf was already there. Tasha shifted mid-impact, her wolf meeting his with impossible grace. She twisted beneath his weight, using his momentum against him, and in one fluid motion, she had him pinned. Her jaws closed around his throat, not biting, not breaking skin, just holding. A promise. Edward went still. His wolf's eyes widened, and slowly, agonizingly, he submitted. Tasha released him and stepped back. Edward shifted, his chest heaving, his expression a mixture of shock and something that looked almost like awe. "What are you?" he whispered. Tasha didn't answer. She turned to face the hall, her silver wolf still visible in her eyes. "Anyone else?" she asked. Silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Because they had all felt it. The silver wolf's power, ancient and undeniable, a force that didn't need to dominate because it simply was. Tasha's gaze swept across the crowd, landing finally on Alpha Dominic. He stood on the dais, his expression unreadable. And then, slowly, he inclined his head. Not submission. Acknowledgement. Tasha turned and walked toward the doors. The crowd parted for her without a word. And as she stepped out into the daylight, the court remained silent. Because the Omega they had mocked, humiliated, and tried to control had just defeated two of the most powerful alphas in the territories. Without breaking a sweat, Chapter 9. The Omega Who Ruled. 3 months later, the Sandoval court looked different. Not in structure. The marble columns still stood. The chandeliers still gleamed. The hierarchy still existed. But the power had shifted. Tasha Cole no longer scrubbed floors. She walked through the halls with her head held high, and when she passed, wolves stepped aside, not out of fear, but out of respect. The Silver Wolf had changed everything. After her victories over Andrew Smith and Edward Martin, the council had no choice but to acknowledge what she was, an Omega with a wolf so powerful that even alphas submitted to her presence. They couldn't control her. They couldn't claim her. They couldn't exile her. So they gave her what she'd never had before. A voice. Tasha now sat on the council, not as a servant, not as a subject, but as an equal. The old laws that had tried to trap her were being rewritten, one by one, with her input. Omegas could no longer be forced into bonds. Omegas could choose their own protectors, or choose none at all. Omegas could challenge for their own freedom. It wasn't perfect. There were still wolves who resented her rise, who whispered that she was an anomaly, a fluke, a threat to tradition. But they didn't say it to her face. Because they'd all seen what happened when someone underestimated the Silver Wolf. Tasha stood in the council chamber now, reviewing documents with Elder Vivian Cross. The older woman's demeanor had shifted over the months, from cold disdain to grudging respect to something that almost resembled mentorship. "The Northern Pacts are requesting a meeting," Vivian said, sliding a letter across the table. "They want to discuss alliance terms." Tasha read it carefully. "They want access to our trade routes." "They want access to you," Vivian corrected. "Your reputation has spread beyond our territory." Other packs see you as leverage, as power. I'm not a bargaining chip. No, Vivian agreed. But you're a symbol, and symbols have influence. Tasha set the letter down. What do you think I should do? Vivian studied her for a long moment. I think you should meet with them. Hear what they have to say. And remind them that you bow to no one. Tasha smiled faintly. You've changed your tune. You've proven yourself, Vivian said simply.
I was wrong about you.
I underestimated what you were capable of. She paused. I won't make that mistake again. It wasn't quite an apology, but from Vivian Cross, it was close enough. Later that evening, Tasha walked through the gardens, the same gardens where she used to hide from Brenda Wood's cruelty, where she used to sit alone and wonder if she'd ever be more than invisible. Now, she walked them as someone the court couldn't ignore. Tasha. She turned to find Jeffrey standing on the path behind her. They'd spoken a few times since the trial. Brief, careful conversations where he kept his distance, and she kept her guard up. Jeffrey, she said evenly. He stepped closer, his expression cautious. I wanted to tell you something. What? I'm stepping down. Tasha blinked. From what? From the succession line, Jeffrey said quietly. I spoke with my father. I'm not fit to lead this pack. Not after what I did. Not after. He stopped, searching for words. You were right. I rejected you because you were weak. And now that you're strong, I see how wrong I was. About everything. Tasha studied him, her wolf quiet but watchful. I don't expect forgiveness, Jeffrey continued. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know, you've changed this court. You've changed me. For a long moment, Tasha said nothing. Then she nodded. Thank you for telling me. Jeffrey inclined his head and turned to leave. Jeffrey, Tasha called. He stopped. You can still be better, she said quietly. You just have to choose it. Jeffrey looked back at her, something raw and grateful flickering in his eyes. And then he left. Tasha stood alone in the garden, the silver wolf inside her calm and content. She had survived humiliation. She had survived betrayal. She had survived laws designed to break her. And now she ruled. Not through force, not through dominance, but through the quiet, undeniable power of a wolf who had always been strong. She just hadn't known it yet. The end. If you enjoyed this story and want more powerful Omega awakenings, second chance romances, and wolves who refuse to submit, don't forget to subscribe to Megan Romance audiobooks and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Until next time, stay fierce.